Hey there guys, it's Metro, and today we're going to be taking a look at Mythic King's Rest, one of the other Mythic-only dungeons that are going to be available in Battle for Azeroth. Yesterday we took a look at Siege of Borealis, and I had some pretty critical things to say about the dungeon, but this dungeon, on the other hand, is awesome. I really like this idea, and there's not a lot going on here, honestly, with the trash, the bosses, nothing crazy. So I do feel like it can maybe, I don't know, it feels outright a little bit too easy compared to the other one, especially. Mechanically, it doesn't feel very unique, but still, the dungeon itself is very well designed. I really like the layout of the dungeon. If I was to say anything about it, it would actually be that I like the layout is probably the most unique layout I've ever seen in any dungeon. Although, I don't know, it's tough to say when you got Waycrest Manor over there, but it's a really cool thing. You're going to see it as we go. Makes you feel like you're in somewhere that really matters. And I think that's probably the thing that they've done the best this expansion, especially with all the troll stuff. So effectively, we're in a troll burial ground, and Zool, main character, main bad guy, essentially, of the first part of this expansion, very evil, kind of come in here to corrupt the previous kings that are buried here. And, there's a whole nother video just on the lore that I could make in this dungeon. But the really cool thing that you're kind of getting a look at right there is that the dungeon is actually located within Atal Dazar. So, unfortunately, you're not actually going to be able to enter, I mean, at least currently on the beta, you can't actually enter this dungeon through the Atal Dazar dungeon instance itself, but you can actually enter it through, and how you enter it is through the uninstanced version of Atal Dazar. So it's really cool. I think they did a good job with that. It's kind of like a mix of the old days, the old and the new put together. Back in BRD and Upper Blackrock Spire, you could enter the raids. Actually allowed you at one point to go in to BRD with the full raid group, etc. It was really cool. I really like the idea, but that's very, very, very dated at this point. So I think this functions pretty well. The fact that it's kind of thematically within, and also within literally, but not the actual instance. So you can't, have a group of 5 people go do Atal Dazar and then immediately go do King's Rest. Hey, you never know. Maybe they'll change that, but realistically, I don't think so. So anyway, not much to talk about on the trash here. This trash, so you walk into this room and you press a button, and then it spawns this trash. Frankly, I couldn't really learn much from this dungeon. It wasn't really something that I felt was very difficult. I mean, especially compared to the other dungeons. I basically did not find myself challenged here. Of course, we had a very good group, a couple people who were extremely geared, and this would be the formation of the group that we go on with to Siege of Borealis, but of course, that dungeon was a lot different. So anyway, yeah, there's just a shield. There's a bunch of magic damage, as you can see from the damage profile weak aura I have there. But realistically, not much going on here. Kind of just tank and spank everything. There's some cool stuff coming up, though, for sure. So anyway, this first boss is very cool. I really like, again, the theme of the boss. But, as I said earlier, it does feel kind of weak. It doesn't feel like there's a lot going on it. I don't see, any immediate challenge. Something that might cause problems in Mythic Plus. I've yet to really see it in this dungeon, especially this boss. But the boss, basically, they're recommending I'm taking it on Skull. He does this AoE. It's like a big wind gust thing that he does. I thought it might knock you back, but it certainly lowers your FPS. But anyway, it doesn't actually, it just does physical damage. So obviously, if you're melee, again, you'll want to get out of this mechanic. But the reason I'm taking him on Skull, there's only one real mechanic that I'm cognizant of. It's he's going to summon gold. He's throwing gold out at them. I think you could see it in the back there. Yeah, there's the mechanic there. He's kind of spitting gold on players. And then after a while, he turns that gold into ads. So basically, you want all the players to stay kind of stacked. I guess this would actually be pretty tough with melee. I mean, it's easy because we have all ranged. As you see, all the ads spawn in the back. They are nowhere in it. And I guess if they reach the boss, something bad happens. Maybe your account gets hacked. I'm not actually sure. It did not happen. Luckily, I have Authenticator, so I don't know if that would matter. But anyway, you just want to kill the ads there, and then that's that, I guess. Now, of course, if you have multiple melee, you maybe have 5 melee based on the healer roll. Yeah, maybe it's tough. I don't know. Maybe the ads, I guess realistically, would just end up kiting the boss, though. So anyway, very, very basic first boss, but very cool thematically. Love that room. I think it's really awesome. And now we're going to head into a very unique little room here. Now, this is where things really start to spice up in this dungeon. Everything from here on out is actually very interesting. The first, up to the first boss was quite boring, in terms of trash especially, but this is really cool. So basically, this is a room I believe, kind of showcasing old kings, maybe, you know, the burial area of old kings. and it's kind of a gauntlet. They spawn, and you have to kill them one at a time. And it's kind of like 4 mini bosses, effectively. So there's going to be 4 different packs of trash, and they're all going to do something very specific. Now, again, I don't know exactly everything happens here, but this first mob is doing this kind of channeled lightning ability, doing a lot of magic damage, a lot of nature damage, especially, and 3 mobs attacking, so it can be relatively difficult. Now, this mob does not appear to be stunnable, grippable. I've tried them all, and it doesn't seem to work. So there you go. So now the next one will come out, and it kind of, again, reminds you of the old days in BRD where the ghost dwarf council thingy, where they just keep coming one after another. But on this, you do seem to have plenty of time. Now, of course, in Mythic Plus, sometimes you don't want to have plenty of time. Sometimes you will, of course, but other times you want it to go as fast as possible. So I could already see this room being a real kind of a mess in Mythic Plus, kind of something that either slows you down heavily or you might even wipe to just because of the way the pacing works. But here it seems like, maybe just a melee mob, and then they're kind of doing some leaps, like mechanics that are jumping around. Pretty good, again, to have Blood Death Knights, of course. Anything that could prevent the mobs from staying out of range too often. But really the coolest thing about this room is that it has these plaques that tell you everything about the person as well. Now, I don't check it out in the video, but really I would recommend you guys coming through here at least at some point in the expansion and kind of getting immersed in the lore here, because this video series is supposed to be about the competitive elements of the dungeon, perhaps how the dungeon forms and how it plays. But honestly, the thing that's most noticeable about this King's Rest dungeon here is how awesome the lore is, especially compared to Siege of Borealis. So again, Siege of Borealis was meant to be the end of the Alliance storyline, the initial storyline that is for the zones, and King's Rest is, of course, the end of the initial Zandalari storyline. But this is just, it feels way more impactful, something that's really special, something I'll never forget. Some very interesting lore here. Very unique areas and characters within this dungeon. And of course, the ending is spectacular, which we will show in its full glory. But anyway, here just looks like one guy's kind of blade storming. The other one's a caster of some sort. You could interrupt that. Shadow Bolt doesn't seem to be doing much. So, like I said, kind of just, obviously, depending on, the affixes, this area might be pretty tough. And I don't know how it's going to work. Is it based on a timer? Like if you take too long to kill one pack, will the next pack activate? I think that's unlikely, but you'll also, potentially have to deal with maybe people dying or something. I'm not sure what happens if you die here. Can you release and re-enter? I'm not sure, because one side was closed. The other side's obviously now open as well. So I don't know. Not sure. So these are things that we'll have to figure out in future testing of this dungeon. But if anybody knows anything more about this, let me know, because I'd love to just myself know these answers. But yeah, again, things get even more interesting as we move on. This is another mini boss style mob. It's just a single mob, and he's got some actual mechanics. So you're gonna see, hopefully you'll see both of them here. But it's, again, if this is something that is high fortified or whatever, however it's gonna work now, if this mob becomes particularly dangerous, then I could already see this being a huge pain. Like, so he basically smashes the ground, puts fire down. Obviously going to do a lot of damage, but here is his main thing. He does this cutter beam, which I believe it just kind of, he kind of just spins with it. So realistically, maybe the best option is to try to tank him in one of the 4 corners of the room, and then have everybody stack on the other side, and then kind of not necessarily on the corner, and then you can get through it to dodge the beam there. But I don't know, it doesn't necessarily seem like much was going on there. Now in this room, this is probably one of my favorite rooms in any dungeon. I really like the look of it, frankly, and again, the trash is quite interesting. So at first I thought this was just a bunch of fodder. They're not even elites, but they do seem to be quite pesky. They throw out slime, and I think when you kill them, they drop slime. Let's see if that's the case. But anyway, yeah, a lot of slime. Yeah, there you go. So they drop some slime. So I'm not necessarily sure what the best choice is going to be here. I could easily see, especially, I don't know, you feel like any non-elite is AoE worthy, but we're pulling a bunch here, got quite a few, and they're kind of doing a lot of damage. It's kind of difficult for people to stand still, as you see that mage constantly having to move out of the swirls. Myself as well, getting hit by them. So, excuse me, realistically, you're going to want to probably be careful here. It doesn't look like very dangerous trash, but the fact that it leaves the puddle on the ground, the fact that it shoots out slime, and there's so many of them, you might actually run into some problems here. So anyway, on to the boss now. This is a very unique boss as well. Again, has some very unique elements, some thematic associations with the room. there's these coffins, kind of like stand-up coffins, sarcophagus, whatever, on the sides of the walls. And they're going to play a pretty big role in the fight. But so far, all I can tell is he puts like fire on the ground. I'm not sure if it's meant to interact some way. Then he uses this Call Fluids ability. I think people said that this is like a healing debuff that needs to be healed. It looks like they get a debuff afterwards, or I'm not sure exactly how it works, honestly. We're crushing this boss. But anyway, so somebody's been put in a coffin, I guess. And the way it's meant to be is if you're in the coffin, you get an extra action button that makes it wiggle or something like that. I'm not sure. Like I said, we absolutely demolished this boss, so I never get to learn it. But it does seem pretty cool. I mean, I like the idea there. I'm not sure exactly what it looks like, what the functionality is, but maybe you guys know more about that and you could give some insight. But at first I thought this ability kind of looks like a water beam. I was thinking maybe the water beam you were meant to go take into the fire, but people said it's just simply a healing debuff in some way. I'm not really sure exactly, again, how. But yeah, the room is really cool. I like that he's throwing the fire out. It's actually like the molten gold plus the fire on the ground makes it look like really, really cool looking. I don't know. I really like the way this room looks, especially it's like something unique about it. The fact that it's like this in the middle of a dungeon that's kind of like dark and kind of desolate, you know? So I think that's something that's awesome about this. This really feels like an underground city. And one thing I'm not going to show very often here, but there's another one of these plaques on the wall. This is related directly to Throne of Thunder. I don't know anything about the lore, but if you guys do, please let me know more about this. I'm actually really interested in this now, and I'm thinking about going back to Mop and potentially learning more about the stuff that happened with the Zandalari and Mop, because obviously those characters in that were a very big deal, but you know, I simply did not pay attention to the lore pre-Legion at all, so I basically know nothing about it. Anyway, this trash gets even more interesting here. This mob type that we're fighting now does this stacking, basically a bleed, and man, does it do a lot of damage. So then, of course, something put down that healing tide totem as well, makes it harder, quicker, less fast to kill them. Obviously, that stacking bleed really hurts. And there's a patrolling behemoth there. Ideally, I think we're gonna wait. I'm not exactly sure how far it patrols away, but it looked like if we pulled them there, we were gonna get 5 mobs. And definitely want to try to go as slow as possible when you're still learning the dungeon. But again, yeah, the stacking, severing something there, it's, yeah, pretty dangerous, honestly. And this is just on 0. But of course, you know, who knows how tuned things are properly. But, you know, especially with that healing tide totem there, going to make it a little difficult. Now, this is a pretty interesting mob type here. I really like this. You have these raptors, and they're going to jump at a target. And when they do, they're going to then do this kind of like frontal slash. And again, they're going to jump away, so you're going to want to grip them. But luckily, the grip will actually interrupt the slash. So you'll see it there, out there slashing at a target. I can grip them back in, and they're no longer doing it. So very unique. Well, not necessarily that unique, but it's cool. I like the way it looks. That's for sure. That's what I really try to get at. They're basically, you know, ghost mounts of these kings or whatever's resting within this mausoleum type area. And, you know, if you kind of get a look around the dungeon, it really feels like you're in somewhere that's important. And, yeah, the trash does a good job of conveying that. Let's put it that way. But anyway, more trash. The patrol is patrolled all the way down there now. So I'm not necessarily sure how dangerous it would be to pull it all together. But, you know, just taking it very cautious. I guess this is kind of like the mobs in the beginning of the dungeon. In fact, that raptor was actually, I believe, part of the gauntlet trash that we talked about earlier. But yeah, still, obviously you see the healing tide going down. Similar trash throughout. That mob there is going to jump and do a cleave. So basically, I think that is the same type that we fought earlier in that gauntlet. And same with the raptor there. So the rest of the trash in this hallway is all kind of repeats. This big guy does kind of like a frontal, or it's kind of like a circular slam. But I guess if there was time to be made up in this dungeon, it would be in this hallway. Actually, really not a lot of trash. So I'll be interested to see mob count, especially. But yeah, this trash doesn't really present much challenge. I mean, it's definitely quite difficult, like I said. But there's really only 2 types of mobs, maybe 3, depending on what you're fighting. But I guess the patrol, you know, that patrol might potentially be difficult. I don't know. We pulled him alone. Maybe he does some type of interaction with the rest of the trash. Realistically, just going to have to deal with the bleed on you, the individual stuff happening to the tank. And then, you know, potentially just AoE these guys down. But yeah, really, I would say that the hardest part of this trash tank is absolutely the bleed here. It's a stacking, kind of gets really out of control really quickly. You're actually going to see me die to it here, even though there's only 2 mobs. which I think is quite funny. Healer actually makes a comment about it. Although realistically, he could have saved me with Bop. I'm pretty sure that Bop would remove something like that, but I don't know. It's like he's like, oh, you die. You need to not die. I'm like, well, I'm just standing there fighting 2 mobs. What are you talking about? I don't know what to tell you. But anyway, yeah. So you can die in this trash. You know, it's still pretty difficult, and that stuff is really really difficult. But okay, so we have this next boss here. Very unique encounter. It's kind of, I don't know. I can't really understand exactly what's happening, but it's definitely more. There's definitely more going on here than meets the eye. So the boss itself is made up of 3 bosses. Some kind of council-style boss, but I'm not exactly sure how they interact with each other. One way or the other, they all seem to have like an ability that happens throughout while you're fighting them, and then something that kind of happens at the end. So this guy is just kind of casting a lightning bolt or whatever, and now he's going to do some kind of poisonous mist or something like that. Just, you know, dispatch him, no big deal. And then, you know, another one comes out. So we have some downtime here, but this one's a larger one, and it's actually going to, while it's doing its mechanics, the other boss kind of reappears at some point. So not really sure, but this mechanic here, it's kind of like a charge. People are stacking to potentially spread the damage. I believe that's probably right, as nobody actually took any damage. But now that mechanic there, the Sunder Armor, man, does that hurt. As you're seeing, I'm getting destroyed. So this boss is really dangerous compared to the other 2, for the tank especially. That Sunder Armor mechanic, man, does that really hurt you. But again, I think it might just be imbalance situation here, but realistically, higher Mythic Plus, that's going to be the hardest part of the fight. So I have to be real careful there. We almost got it a second time, but luckily we killed it before now. I don't know, maybe you could move out of it, maybe you could stop it in some way, but regardless, we don't have to deal with that. So anyway, a third one comes out. This one's going to throw some axes around. People were talking about this one dropping your FPS as well. I imagine it's because of the axes or something, but regardless, the axes actually knock you back, and as she continues to do it, it's actually going to be pretty difficult to avoid. So anyway, there's the first guy again. He just disappears after you interrupt him. I don't really know what's happening there. Could be a bug, could be part of the fight. Not really sure. Again, if anyone knows anything more, please contribute to the discussion down below. But fight itself, very unique. The fact that you're fighting basically 3 different types of mobs. Yeah, it's interesting, but really not a lot going on here. It's especially, you know, on this difficulty. Like I said, things, you know, Mythic Zeros were pretty difficult at one point, but maybe we're overgeared. Maybe this one's too a little bit undertuned. I'm not sure, but yeah, this was actually really easy, especially compared to Siege of Borealis. I didn't really feel like there was much that could potentially challenge me, especially potentially challenge the group. So anyway, there's a little cutscene here. We're gonna listen to this together. Very unique, very unique. How many times have I said that? But it's pretty cool. Reminds me of Throne of Thunder here with this bridge. Waterfall stops, and then some of the some really important lore begins here. So we'll take a look at that together. I really like the idea here, though, of him, Zul, being in here and interacting with the king in this way. So let's take a look. Maybe a bit too opulent.
This is the resting place of the first king of Zandalar. The Tsar was stubborn, but now he serves.
Silence, prophet of lies! I spent my life resisting your master, only for you to bind me to his will and death.
What's going on there?
These intruders will die, but I need not listen to your prattling while I make it so.
Complain all you like, my king, but you should have realized there was no escaping Gahun.
So it's pretty interesting, obviously, the implications there. You know, the king is fully aware of who Zul is. I guess his master is mentioned. Who knows? If, again, not a big lore nut, but there's probably some precedent there. Maybe you guys know more about that than I do. But I really like the idea here. You know, it's a scene that probably everybody and their brother is going to skip thousands and thousands and thousands of times throughout the expansion. But, you know, I really think, you know, the fact that especially that it's included in the beta is really cool. So anyway, here we're fighting a Shadow of Zul. He's doing some things, but again, can't really tell what. Looked like some kind of big AoE splash damage from that pool. Maybe if he stood on top of us, it would have done even more damage. I don't know. Also saw another one of those types of mobs that we saw in the Zul encounter and at the beginning of the dungeon that can actually be dispelled to be killed, which I think is quite funny. They nerfed the Blood Elf racial in the way that they did, and now it's actually among the best damaging racials in the game in some of these situations. That's pretty cool. So anyway, here's the king. I guess this is the first king, like they talked about in the little cutscene. The first king of the Zandalari built the city of Taldazar, and the rest is history. But this is actually a really cool encounter. A lot of stuff going on in this fight, and even though, again, it wasn't too difficult, this feels a lot more like the last fights that we've seen in some of the other dungeons. So there he did his jump. Here he's going to do spawning tornadoes, right? And then there's going to be ads coming out. Raptors, I believe, meant to be his mounts. You know, we've seen that it's such a theme throughout all the trolls and them having the raptor mounts. So he actually gets on that one. Pretty cool. But again, the other one can be gripped. That one's going to be kind of like jumping around. You're going to, yeah, there you go. See him jump around there. And if I can grip him again, that's good. But the other raptor that he's riding currently is fearing me. That's pretty bad. I don't know if there's a way to avoid it. Obviously, maybe AMS would prevent it, but I'm not really paying attention. Let's see if we could see when it happens again. I assume the raptor casts it, but yeah, there's the cast there. So didn't look like it could be interrupted. I don't know. But anyway, I think probably what you want to do here is kill the raptors. They have a lot less health than the boss, obviously, so probably, you know, what you're being hinted at towards. But I don't know. Realistically, the fight, you know, there's a lot going on, but like I said, in the difficulty that we did it on, we didn't interact with it too much. I imagine these cyclone things are going to be a real problem, but here's the final mechanic he does. Some spears come flying out of the ground, or flying out of the air, really. And I guess if you get hit by them, you get stunned there. Saw that. But they're kind of rolling around the room. I'm not really sure how other players are going to dodge that. But anyway, you saw him actually like jump through that center thing. I was actually worried he was going to reset there, but luckily he did not. So I don't know. Those like spears coming from the ground, it really going to complicate the encounter. I make the choice to just kind of run through them, but that's pretty unfair to the group. Obviously, the rest of the group can't do that. So, hey, you know what? Very unique encounter. Again, like I said, how many times have we said that word today? But I really like this dungeon. I think this might actually be my favorite dungeon, especially from the theme. The mechanics didn't strike me as anything crazy. Wasn't too difficult, but I really enjoyed the progression through it and seeing all the lore. And like I said, I missed a lot of the lore. A lot of the lore I'm oblivious to. So if you guys have anything to add on that front, please do. Otherwise, thanks for watching. This dungeon, King's Rest, is testable currently as one of the 2 Mythic Zero only dungeons. And hopefully we'll get to see more stuff coming up soon. So thanks for watching. We'll see you guys there.